Will be. Oh, this is the biggest production I've ever done. So, good afternoon. Any comments about this morning that you would like to share, or any experience or something, some question that might have arisen for you? Was there something that you learned that was new, or there's something that you experienced that was different? Garth, you want to tell people what your experience was?
I've done that ATM a number of times, and every time I do it, I learn something new. And this time, I seem to focus on how Jeff said, when you lift your pelvis, make it feel so that the weight doesn't increase on your feet. And so, how do you do that? And I realized, and in that moment, that the whole process of lifting the inner edge, and you discover twisting the tibia, the various twists you can make in your leg, all set it up so that you have an even tone all throughout your leg, and you can subtly control it. And so I found myself doing these fascinating twists with my femur, with my tibia, to create the right tone throughout my leg so that my pelvis was actually quite lightweight. And it took maybe 10 ATMs to get that.
He's done it a few times, but
yeah.
But I consider this to be a seminal lesson. I mean, one of the lessons that has within it it's the tip of a big upside down pyramid. So I have about 10 or 12 lessons that I consider to be seminal, and this is one of them, the edges of the feet. So anybody else have something to share, or if you'll give me the microphone, I'll run it around. Maxine, thank you.
I was struck by its relation to my seventh cervical,
yes,
which unfortunately was talking to me a lot this morning, and I was never quite successful at totally getting it to be easy. But if you have any ways of winding around to that end, it would be great.
Okay, good. Rachel?
So now I'm left with a question, because I thought that it was the movement in the hip joint and the pelvis that got the feet to the floor. That when you make that movement correctly in your spine and in your hip joint, your feet are going to go to the floor automatically.
You're at a different point in the lesson than he is.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you were at the end of the lesson. At the beginning of the lesson, when we started to lift at that point, begin to lift the pelvis.
Okay.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I can say that I did experiment with that in the swimming pool, and it's amazing. No gravity.
Huh?
You can do that frog movement too without any effort in the back.
Wonderful. All right. Nothing else? Joyce. God, I'm doing good. I've remembered 3 names in a row.
Early in the lesson, I think it was the 433.
Yes.
Lifting the inner and outer edges of my feet were just incredible in terms of my balance and my connecting my feet with the rest of me.
Wonderful.
And standing.
Yeah.
Was great. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important that
and basic, Jeff. Really.
It's basic.
Basic.
That's why I say it's seminal. To me, it couldn't be more important for us to understand this relationship with our feet to the floor. So we'll take a moment with this. Anything else? We're good? Okay, please.
I found myself quite taken with the being able to both do the clockwise rotation or the counterclockwise rotation, and it's sort of still, I'm almost stuck in a loop around that, so I want to explore that a little bit more.
Okay, good. So, I know that not many people, different trainings look at different things, and It's like the blind men and the elephant, right? Those of us that were around Moshe, and all of us have a different experience of the elephant. And so we all describe the elephant in different ways. And it's all the elephant, but each of us have our own predilection and our own way of understanding the elephant. And so I've spent a long time drilling into some of these ideas that Moshe gave us. And so the notions, and I'll tell you, the notion that struck me the most was, he said in the San Francisco group, he says, I'm able to lift someone's head without changing the tone of my arms, which was a complete mystery to me. I had no idea what that meant. And it took me 15 years before I could actually achieve that for myself, and many more years before I could actually teach it in any kind of way that made real sense. And I've been continually refining that idea for a long time. So, is everybody clear on the nature of ground forces? No. Ground forces. So, does this table weigh anything? It weighs something if you put it on a set of scales. Right? But obviously it's not sinking through the floor, is it? Why not? Because there's some force, there's some elastic force. We could measure that this table has made some kind of depression in the ground to some degree. But there's enough resilience and enough pushback that the table is being lifted. In other words, the weight of the table is canceled by the force that's coming back through. The force of the table down, the force of the table come up. So in one sense, there's no weight, right? Now Moshe talked about, he said about that the point of our skeleton is to give us the experience of being weightless. That means that our skeleton, that the point must be that we must be able to organize ourselves to find the points of support, to find the clear, specific way of being with the floor in such a way that the ground forces can rise from the floor upward and through us. Those elastic forces. So many of us, and I think some of you found when you started to walk that you found and you go down, right? Well, yeah, the ground forces are certainly there, but the force of gravity is winning, right? And then you come onto the other foot and you have the sense that you've touched the floor and up you come. You just rise up. And at the end of the lesson, I think most of you had the sense that you were already just sort of lifting away from the floor, yes? That the material of the lessons. And each of those lessons very specifically, and it's not the only reason for doing those lessons, but the secret within those lessons is that those lessons, that those shapes of movement profoundly affect our ability to lift ourselves away from the floor. And Moshe knew it. He didn't ever say a damn word about it. But he knew, just by the very nature of the way that he created the conditions, that the conditions, if you met the constraints of the lesson and you went through the conditions of the lesson would create that change within you. And whether you want it or not. Right? So when you make that little movement of, I'm going to do this hopefully well, but if I make this little movement of being here, and I make this movement so I've lifted myself away from the ground, and I'm continually lifting myself away from the ground, right? And you see my pelvis is above the floor beforehand, and I'm continually giving myself the sense of being lifted away from the ground. Or I do the big carp jump, boom, boom, and I land in such a way that I'm organized in such a way that I don't fall. I land in such a way that I have a sense of lightness. When you completely make the carp jump well, your back arches along the whole, there's an arch along the entirety of your spine. You distribute the force along the entirety of your spine. You touch the floor without banging into the floor. And it's the movement away from the floor that makes it so you don't bang into the floor, even though you fell with your feet from this high in the air. And we don't have time to make these demonstrations, right? But we can express it, right? So can you imagine lifting your feet way in the air, arching your back, touching the floor in such a way that when you touch the floor, your pelvis and back continually is lifted away from the floor, so that you land as if you're continually lifted, like you're standing? What profound effect is that going to have on you? There's no question that you're not going to get up from the lesson and go like this, right? Because your whole system has just done that in an explosive, powerful way. The tone in your system to do that is immense. And it doesn't take much to tonify the extensors. A small percentage of change in tone in the extensors makes a huge difference in the quality of the ability for us to be erect over our feet. Yeah? So part of understanding these lessons, you know, it's very easy to learn the lessons and to speak them at rote and not understand the story in the lessons. To be able to put the lessons together in such a way that you tell a story that creates the conditions for a person to really experience themselves in a completely different way. Yeah? And to have the knowledge about it, because otherwise you're just teaching lessons, but do you understand the story, the internal story that you're trying to express in each lesson? Yeah? So now if I ask you, and those of you who know, don't shout it out, okay? But if I ask you, your heel points towards which toe? Which toe does your heel point towards? How many of you have ever even asked this question before? So many of you, because I happen to know that in many trainings, people don't talk about the particular ways that the structure of the foot is available to you. It's not a problem, it's the different training. But in this moment, we're going to talk about it a little bit. Yeah. I have a client who went to have a lesson with another trainer, and he said, what I'm really interested in is, and the trainer said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's okay, right? It's not a us and them kind of thing. It's an entirety of the elephant that we're interested in. And it's a question of having everybody, all this material from every point of view being taught. And as practitioners, for us to continue to look into many different possibilities so we can grow ourselves into being as rich a practitioner as we can become. Yeah? So have you figured out where the heel points towards? Yes.
Is it in the context of the lesson, or is it in standing general?
In every moment of your life, where does your heel points towards which toe? Okay, so some of you think it points to the first toe. Some of you think it points to the fourth toe. Those of you that think it's the fourth toe are accurate. Now, I don't know how much he's going to be able to zoom this in. But if we look really carefully here, the calcaneus has this sort of ledge here that goes through the cuboid and right out and through into the fourth toe. Okay, so that's good. He can get that right in, okay? Danny, thanks. Donnie, the cameraman. Okay. So let's take a look at why is that important to us. We can make a distinction in the foot as to the structure of the foot. What's the foundation of the foot, and what's, in a sense, the proprioceptive aspect of the foot, right? So now if we look at this, and we look at the heel pointing to the fourth toe, then that's considered to be the long arch, right? Now, when we stand the foot, and we make a movement, and many people go from the heel to the first toe in walking. That means that as they go from the heel to the first toe, you can watch the distance between the heel and the first toe expand. Yeah? Now, let's look at what that means. Because ours, as a system, our system abhors falling. The moment that you begin to, in any way, begin to fall to the floor, we have to engage our tissue, we have to engage ourselves to keep us from falling further. Right? So at any moment, and so many things that we do and so many things we think about, we actually are requiring the stabilization processes within ourselves, the Golgi tendon responses, to perform the act of stabilizing us, when in fact they're protective processes, but we use them. I'll give you an example. So many of my colleagues teach sitting to standing in such a way that as I move from sitting to standing, that my knees go forward. And as my knees go forward, the force of my movement takes the force into my knees, and at this point in time, my patellar tendon is engaged, which tells my quadriceps to contract. Right? So I'm utilizing a stabilization response to keep me upright. Now let's go back 40 years. I used to hang out with a guy named Moshe Feldenkrais. Right? And if you know anything about Moshe's history, you know his knees were absolutely destroyed. Right? Both knees were destroyed. Now, can you imagine Moshe getting up like that? There was no way his knees could have accepted that. So if you watch Moshe carefully, Moshe's knees only unfolded. Yeah? If you watched him very carefully, his head came down, and I have to do this sideways for the camera. His head came down, and his pelvis actually slid backwards and up to counterbalance himself so that his center of mass stayed between his feet. And then he simply lifted himself away from the floor. Looked like Moshe. Kind of. Do it again, do it again. I should really make it look like Moshe. Come here, help me. I'll really make it look like Moshe. So here's what I have to do. First of all, I have to make myself look decrepit. Please help me. And so he gets ready to help me. Go ahead, help me. Just exactly that. No, he made me fall over 3 times. I'd come up to him, he'd be sitting there at the end of the day, and I'd walk up to him, and he'd make himself decrepit, and he'd put his hand out like, oh, please help me get up. And there was never an ounce of weight in his hand. And I would literally throw myself backwards, and he'd look at me and go, you dummy. 3 times. I still didn't learn, right? So the question is, how do I unfold myself from the floor? That's the question that he asks in What's Good Posture and Awareness Through Movement. When you look at the book, and you try to go through that lesson. And he says, tilt yourself forward. If you read the lesson, he says, tilt yourself forward. The moment I tilt myself forward in such a way that my knees go forward, I've already defeated the outcome. Because my center of mass is going forwards, isn't it? Which means my anti-gravity musculature and all the rest of your musculature that's keeping me from falling is engaged. So if it's engaged, then it's not useful for lifting me in the standing. It's already interfering with the activity. So the whole question of lifting myself away from the floor, right? So if we look carefully at the 4th and 5th toes, we see that they are joined to the heel by the cuboid. And this is an incredibly important bone for us to really begin to grasp and understand what the potential of this is. If we look carefully at the cuboid, first we can see that it comes up and under these bones here, the cuneiforms. So you can see that I can turn it. The cuboid is not square. It sounds like it, but it turns up and under the cuboid. The cuneiforms, yeah? The 3rd cuneiform. It also has a part of it that turns up and under the navicular. So here's the navicular. And if you look to see, there's a connection under the talus. And then we look to see, and there's a connection here deep under the calcaneus itself, under the heel bone itself. Can you see that? more or less. So there's a connection way under here, under the talus. So this is the keystone to the whole foot. Yeah? And we were working to understand how to organize ourselves over this. Someone said during the lesson, it feels like I am standing on the outer rails of my feet, that I don't have the sensation that my feet are on the floor in the same way. Right? So now, if we look at this really carefully, we'll see that this whole thing fits together in such a way that when we stand, the cuboid actually begins to turn up and under and into the foot. So we're lifting the inner edge of our foot, but what we're really beginning to do is affect the capacity we have to bring the inner edge of our foot up and over the cuboid. And you can see what happens if I fall with these bones off the cuboid. If I fall off the cuboid, then I get this distance between my heel and my first metatarsal head, and so I've now pronated my foot, but more importantly, I'm falling to the ground. And not only am I falling to the ground, but I'm making a spiraling movement to fall, like as if I'm lifting the outer edge of my foot. I'm beginning to fall, and I have rotational forces all the way through my system. If I took this and had the acetabulum here, my leg, my femoral head, would actually be trying to come out and back and out of the acetabulum. If I lift myself onto the cuboid and onto the fourth, then I get this movement, and this spiraling movement that comes from the foot, through the knee, through the lower leg, through the knee, and it spirals up and into the femoral head, spirals up and into the acetabulum, right? Which is what we did over and over and over again in those lessons, right? I asked you to put your feet together, lift the inner edge of your feet, and lift your pelvis and slide it forward. What shape did you begin to make? If you looked at that, you made the shape of turning the inner edge of your foot up and into your pelvis. Yes? If you, in all the movements that we made, from standing and lifting the inner edge of the foot and finding the movement of the tibia, the fibula, the rotational force that makes this rotation to come up, begins to bring you, when you lift the inner edge of your foot, begins to have this whole lifting movement that comes up and into the pelvis. Yeah? And when you lift the outer edge of the foot, you begin to have the change in the movement so that the outer edge, the spiral begins to go the other way. The fibula begins to move down and forward. The capsule, the femoral head in the capsule begins to rotate forward and down. And so the question is, what's just right? Where would Goldilocks like to be? Right? What's just right? So let's look at some other elements of the foot, important elements of the foot for us, so that we can understand more about this relationship. If I wanted to lift a really heavy weight, right? So I'm going to be an Olympic lifter, and I'm going to lift a weight equal to my body weight, and I'm going to come away from the floor. Or if you want to go to CrossFit, what are they going to? CrossFit trainers get their license to teach in a weekend. Thank God, Moshe used to go through the park and ride in the park and say, oh, he'd see all the golfers and the runners, and he'd say, more people for me to work with. CrossFit, that's our place. So what it means is, where am I going to, what part of my foot am I going to come away from? My forefoot or my heel? So it's going to be my heel, isn't it? Right? I'm not going to lift a heavy weight off my toes, am I? No. But the message that you'll get in any gym is, press your heels into the ground before you lift. I can't think of a sillier thing to think of. Right? Press your heels into the ground. So have part of your attention going that way when you're going that way. The weight in and of itself will put you in the ground. Right? The amount of weight, the moment I begin to lift it, will come into my feet. The question is how do I unfold myself away from the ground? Yeah? So we're coming away from the heel, but the heel is a very small surface area. There's not much surface area here. The heel needs an outrigger. There's your outrigger. Right? That's the first outrigger for the heel. That's what helps give you the length that you need, the base that you need, so that you can actually stand and be over what Moshe called your point of sustentation. Right? The whole fourth, this line from the heel to the fourth toe. That's the first arch. Right? So, some other things about the foot that are interesting. Larry talks about there being a tripod. Larry, you're welcome to jump in on this at any point in time, so get into the conversation.
I'm here to learn.
Oh, shut up.
That's harder.
I know. Larry talked, so there are many, many ways to think about the foot in relationship to the ground. We can think of it as a tripod. Some people talk about it having 2 points on the heel so that you actually have 4 points. Years ago, there was a wonderful practitioner named Patrice Aguilar from Belgium. And he was my assistant trainer a number of times, and he taught anatomy for physical therapy school in Europe, in Belgium. And we had a lot of conversations, and he said, no, the foot is like a catamaran. A catamaran. So what's a catamaran? So a catamaran is a 3-hulled sailing boat. Trimaran. Oh, excuse me, trimaran. Oh, I screwed up. 3-hulled boat. So you have a middle hull and then you have 2 outriggers, right? And he said if you really look carefully and you look at the way the cuboid and you look at the way that the navicular and you look at the way the cuneiforms all form in here, then you'll see that these 2 bones are basically encased with the ligament structure. There's very little chance that they move very much, right? And I have a very good friend, a woman named Magali Messac, who was a French ballet dancer. When she left the ballet in Hamburg, she left to a stage of roses up to her knees. Right? Just wonderful, wonderful performer. And she said she came to the New York City and she did a ballet with Balanchine, and then she worked for the other ballet company. But she said Balanchine and her argued because Balanchine wanted her to dance off of her first toe. Right? So like the Cuban dancers, where you see the first toe and you see all the extension, you see the change in the arch, and you see the dancing off the first toe. And the lesson that Ashley, what's her name that Moshe gave Ashley Merrill. And if you, Merrill Ashley, thank you. To see an extraordinary lesson, if you haven't watched Moshe do this lesson, get the videotape of the lesson, because they cut the sensory nerves in her hips so she wouldn't feel pain. And so she couldn't find where her leg was. And Moshe created a lesson that made the other leg dominant so that she could move onto the other leg, and then she'd be on the leg, and then she could find the way to use this leg as a support, and she danced many more years. Right? So where did that just take me? Just got lost in my... Trimaran. So Balanchine kept wanting Magali to dance off the first toe for this aesthetic. And she said, no way. I'm going to dance between my second and third toes. So if you look really carefully, that stable nature, the way the cuboid forms under and the way that it forms with the navicular, creates this stable line between the second and third toes. Right? So, and you can look, the force coming off the second toe and between the third toe comes exactly into the middle of the talus. Yeah? So she danced off the toe and never had difficulty with her legs, with her feet, with her hips. Whereas many of the people that dance off the first toe, because of the extreme position, while keeping the turnout, creates a tremendous amount of force. So if we stand, and we really stand, I can't do this well, but if I'm really standing here well, then if I really pay attention to what I'm doing, I'm not staying stuck on any of the points. I'm actually floating onto the inner part of my foot a little bit. I get a message of equilibrium, it's an upside down, I'm sort of like an upside down pendulum, right? My feet are tied so that my body makes the pendular movements. And so at this point in time, this ability to touch the inner part of my foot to get a message, to get the message to float over to the other side of my foot, makes it so that I'm actually floating over a relatively rigid surface. And I'm actually floating between these points. So if you want to look at the foot as a tripod, 4 points, as something solid or something that's flexible and functional, that's up to you and your thinking, and as you develop your thinking, right? We have to obviously have the first toe. Why do we have such a big bone in the first toe? Because when I make rotational movements, I need to have a tremendous base on which to rotate off of. Right? So the question then becomes, and we could spend many hours on looking at how to find and organize our feet for walking, organize our feet for stability, organize our feet for standing, organize our feet for all kinds of things. There's a tremendous amount that we can look at as we do this. Okay, anything else? If anything else comes up, I'll bring it up. So I thought it might be good for us to take a few moments and see if with our hands we couldn't recreate some of the things that we produce for ourselves so that we can work with other people on some of these things. Yes? When we push off? She wants to know what happens when we push off. Okay, so one of the things that happens is when we push off. I work with a number of NHL hockey players, yeah? And almost invariably they come to me with groin injuries, right? Now, when we study really carefully how these guys skate, right, they all have the notion that what they have to do is push into the ice, crush the ice, and push themselves away from that, right? Once the skate has crushed the ice to a particular point, you don't have to push anymore, right? Because the skate's going to do that, your body weight's going to do it. The question becomes, how can I move myself away from my foot? Yeah, which is different than pushing myself away from my foot, right? You watch a great runner, you watch my bobcat. That animal does not push itself away from the ground, right? It has such an organization that it simply prances, right? So for example, can I borrow you for a moment? You. No, not you, Martha, the big guy. I have to make the demonstration look good. Daniel.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so it's very, very interesting. If we really look at the world of stability, and so when you go to a martial arts class, you get taught, so as he starts to push against me, to get stable, I start to push against the ground. But it's funny, he actually senses that I'm not stable. Because how did I do that? In order for me to push against the ground, I had to fix myself. Right? Now, if I organize myself in such a way that he can't put any more weight into me, I have the ability to walk through him. Right? Now, if I pushed against the ground, you watch, the moment I start to push against the ground, so I push, he now sensed that I got fixed again. But if I'm organized in such a way that as he pushes into me, that he can't put weight into me, then myself can just simply move away from the ground. I'm sorry, I don't want to push you over. Okay, so the whole question becomes in how do we move away from the ground rather than how do we push away from the ground? So in walking, for example, as I take a step, And as I peel myself away from the ground, what's the timing in the relationship as to how I peel myself away from the ground and come onto this other foot? Clearly I'm weighted. I'm weighted to my own body weight, right? But there's a question is, how does this movement lead to me coming onto the top of my femoral head in such a way that I become stable, I could dance, I can make the next movement, the next step, and how do I peel myself away from the ground sequentially onto my other foot? How do I move in such a way that I don't just, or have the pattern within myself of down, up, which we have, but we don't understand the degree to which these forces create shearing forces within us that eventually become the basis with which our clients come to us. Right? Because the person that lands like this and takes their hip out and falls it and brings their whole body weight into their sacrum and has back pain, and this foot doesn't provide them support to get onto them, this foot doesn't provide them the support to get onto this leg, and that person then comes to me and experiences back pain because their body weight continuously, over and over and over again, is shearing across the place that is sore for them, that hurts them. The point that sore is an indication of what they don't understand about the way they can function, the way they can support themselves. Right? And you take that person and you have that person come to the place where they lift all of the movement, the force of the movement, above the point that hurts them. Where's the pain? Right? There's no reason to associate pain to the activity. Pain is associated to the activity where they're not supporting themselves. So the question becomes, how do I find the support? The support. Moshe was interesting. He said, this is another many-year search for me. He said, in walking, we feel the head of the fourth metatarsal. I said, what does that mean? He didn't mention the fourth metatarsal in any other instance in Amherst. And I had no idea what it meant until I had plantar fasciitis. And for 2 years I began to play with the idea of how do I support myself in such a way that I don't collapse into my heel. How do I find the movement from my heel through my foot in such a way that the movement comes up and through me so that I don't have this pronation, this collapse of my body weight into the tissue. Right? Now once I started to play with changing that relationship so that I'm coming up and over and continually inviting the ground forces, inviting my cuboid, inviting the foundation of my foot. The foundation of my foot is this rail. This building, when you're in a house, you know what a foundation wall looks like, right? Everybody knows what a foundation wall is. You build your structure on top of a decent foundation. Our foundation is this relationship between the heel and the fourth metatarsal. Yeah? Now, when we look at the rest of the foot, then the rest of the foot provides us with, in a sense, proprioception. It tells us where we are in space. I didn't bring the right leg with me, but one of the things, well, I brought the right leg, but I didn't bring the right one. I have one where the talus actually glides, and I'm not going to be able to show you. I'll demonstrate, but I can't quite show you. But there's an argument. Last time I was in Perth, I ran into a woman, Julie Pecknoser, and we had a conversation. Her research, she's doing research, and she says that the most highly innervated for proprioception joint in the body is the hip joint. And I said, really? And I couldn't decide whether she was basing this on numbers, gross numbers of proprioception because of the joints larger, or whether she was basing it on the density of the population. Because in every instance I've ever heard or read, and the people I've talked with, the most densely populated joint for proprioception is the ankle joint. Yeah? Now it makes sense. If I'm standing here and I'm falling all over the place, I have to know where I am if I'm moving, and if I'm changing direction. So the three major proprioceptive receptors tell me where I am, if I'm moving, and if I'm changing direction. And I have a fourth receptor, which is a pain receptor, that says, no, don't do that. Right? All right, so we have, so the joint of the ankle is hugely innervated with proprioceptive receptors. Being tall like this, then obviously as an upright, upside down pendulum, I need to have continually be able to return to, move towards equilibrium. And as I understand it, equilibrium, these responses are a spinal cord response. I make a small shift, I start to fall, I get a message, it goes to my spinal cord, comes back. It's not a question of balance, it's a question of maintaining my equilibrium. And equilibrium and balance are two different functions in the nervous system. Yeah? So if we look really carefully at the talus, and we'll want to look at this before the afternoon's over, the talus is a gliding joint. And for those of you that are not accustomed to really looking at the skeleton, if you look at the shape of the bone, it'll tell you what it does. If you have the ability to look at the shapes of these different bones, you can begin to ascertain what the bone does. Now, unfortunately, like I said, and it's important for us because these skeletons that we look at oftentimes give us poor information. For example, this skeleton is pinned. And so it gives you a sense that the talus works around the central axis. Right? Which clearly cannot be the case. Because there's no way in the world if I worked around the central axis like that I would be able to get to the point where I could do ballet. Do we have any ballerinas in here? Someone former? Okay, that's good. Can you do releve? Is it? Was Barbara? Yeah. Yeah. Well, just someone who's really can really do releve, like really do. Okay, good. So come here for a moment. We'll use you just for a moment. Okay. So can you stand on the table?
You hold on to me.
I'll hold on to you.
My balance is not.
Your balance isn't great. Okay, you're doing great. Okay. So now, if she starts to go up into releve, you watch. Look at how far she's able to bring her talus forward. Yeah? It's gorgeous, yeah? You can see the degree that her talus has to glide forward if she's going to get into releve. And you look to see where she's standing on her feet. She went to the fourth metatarsal to lift herself up. If dancers would only understand this, that all they try to, yes, but if they only understood that they only have to fall forward, literally fall upward on the fourth metatarsal, rather than all the work they do. They have calves like this. Why? Because they squeeze the calf to lift themselves, rather than being in an attitude that they simply fall upwards. Yeah? So you watch her arch glide forward. Right? It's extraordinary. Beautiful. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you. And of course, when you see the platform divers, before they dive and they go out on the platform, they're 30 feet above the 20 feet, whatever, 10 meters, 30 feet above the pool, and they put their feet on the platform, what do? They sink their feet down, their heel down below the platform, and so the acute angle of their foot to their shin is tremendous. So what happened with that movement? Clearly it had to glide backward to do that. So there's a whole glide of the talus below the tibia, yes? So we have to really understand that, because in the way that we even touch people will determine the way that we give the message to them when we're giving lessons. And if I have one vision, I move them in one way, and it gives them a relatively limited sense of what it is for them to stand on their feet and to move. If we have an expanded vision of this, then it's not long before our very touch begins to convey the information to the person for them to experience. Right? Okay. All right, I think that's enough for this. Is there anything I forgot? Anything else anybody wants to ask a question of? Yeah, Alan.
Sorry to be dense, but you said balance and equilibrium are not the same thing.
They're two different functions. Balance goes to the it's a lower brain stem function, or it's a so it moves all the way to the brain. Equilibrium goes only part way up the spine, and the message it needs for the corrections are a spinal cord response. Ho 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 ho. It's right there.
Yeah, that was kind of my question too. When you're talking about the equilibrium, is that the Golgi tendon and
no, the Golgi. Look. If I
stretch response.
No, so say I'm walking along. I'm in the forest in my favorite park, Cougar Mountain, where I do a lot of walking and hiking, and I step on a root, and my foot starts to do that. Right? Now, I'm now in this position where I'm getting a tremendous quick amount of response from my tendons because I'm falling, and my system, the tendon response, knows that if I keep going, I'm going to tear the musculature. So it sends the message to the musculature to stabilize me and pull and to shorten the musculature and to bring me back to stability over my leg. So it's the stabilization response is what the Golgi tendon response is for. Right? We're talking about equilibrium. So sensation, movement and sensation, they dance back and forth. Right? And if I held myself perfectly rigid in such a way that I didn't allow myself to move, I would be here for about 5 minutes before I passed out. That's what happened in West Point when they used to make them stand at absolutely rigid military tension. Because we require movement to know where we are in space. We have to have the proprioception continually feeding back to us the information that we're moving through space and where we are in space. If I make it so that I'm so rigid that I don't get feedback, I literally pass out. So all these little movements, these tiny little movements that we're making, and I'm falling a little bit and then I'm coming back. I'm falling a little bit and then I'm coming back. I'm falling a little bit and I'm coming back. These are movements of equilibrium, where I'm trying to come to, in a sense, a stable rest place. Right? That's what equilibrium would be for a pendulum, wouldn't it? Except for we're an upside-down pendulum. Right? So the pendulum is eventually going to find a point of stability, isn't it?
And you're saying that's a loop that just goes to the spinal column, doesn't make it all the way up to
As
the brain
I understand
moment
it,
to moment.
from the physiology I've read.
Yeah.
So am I accurate? And those of you who know?
I had something they called a vestibular concussion,
Yes.
and it had to do with my inner ear.
Yes, but that's a completely different question than what we're dealing with here now.
Well, it had everything to do with my equilibrium
Yes.
and my ability to do anything. I mean, I literally
Right.
stood up and couldn't
And
find any equilibrium at all.
Couldn't determine where you were in space.
No,
And
was
people-
that just all proprioceptic? Is that what you're saying?
No, because
mean-
when you have the inner ear disturbance, the inner ear determines you have two physiological aspects. You have the otolithic region and you have the semicircular canals. And the semicircular canals are in 3 different planes,
Right.
and they tell you how fast you're moving your head through space. The otolithic apparatus, which is 2 little canals, the little hair-like follicles within,
Right.
and the little impediments, the stone impediments, as they move over the hair, they determine where your head is in space. So when you have a vestibular concussion, you can't determine where your head is in space. Therefore, you don't have any basis for determining the sensation of where you are. If you take a lot of people, if in a whiplash, car wreck, they get thrown so fast, their head whips so fast that they damage the hair-like follicles in the otoliths. And so if you lay them down quickly, their eyes will dilate. If you if they often have continuous upper cervical pain because they're continually having to, they can't trust their inner ear to how they're going to maintain their head, so they have to engage the musculature to maintain their position, their head position. So they're in pain. And what has to happen for them is they have to, all of the other balance processes have to become awakened so that they can again return to a sense of safety.
So is that what they, because I ended up in physical therapy where they constantly put me off balance.
Continuously, and they're continually helping you to re-seek balance.
And so that's different than, that doesn't connect at all to, I mean, it was my whole body that...
Yeah, of course, but any one of these systems is going to affect. We're just playing right now, basically, with this relationship with the feet in relative to the ground, and the way that the feet help us to propel movement up and through the ground. Okay. And we're playing with the way that these ATM lessons created the conditions for you to stand on these rails of your feet.
You were talking about equilibrium in certain...
Yeah, because of the question of proprioception. Yes. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, Maya.
I still don't feel like you talked about the. I still want to know how the path changes, if it does, with push-off, from the weight bearing on, and so you're lifting from the floor. But then when you're going to the other foot, don't you change where you are on the forefoot?
At the very last moment, the movement goes out along the line. I get continued sequential support. And then at the very last moment, I go from across the outer edge of the fourth across to a point between, my battery just ran out. Hello, battery.
Do you want this one?
So, and this is, there are many ways of thinking of walking. For me, I'm going only at the last moment. At the last moment, do I leave between my first and second toe. Because I'm moving myself to stand over the femoral head of my other foot. Right? And come again. Don't push so hard this time, damn it. Okay. So just if we're watching, so just lightly. Yeah, that can't be me, can it? That's something over there. Okay, her testing. Okay, so careful. Wait, just wait. So if I walk like many people walk, many people, as soon as they stand on one foot, this leg just simply loses its ability to support it. Okay, I guess I have to do three things. So in the way that many people walk, just a little less. So many people walk, when they walk, so I take a step and you watch. I'm dependent upon my left leg to catch me. I lost the connection with my right foot to the floor. Now if I make the movement, I'm continually peeled against the floor. I'm peeling against, I still have this relationship with the floor as if he can't put weight into me. Right? So if he begins to push into me, I'm still here. And I want to be able to walk in such a way that I can continuously make the movement, or I could receive this weight in such a way that I could reverse this movement in such a way that there's no point that I give up. I want to have this continuous ability to support myself, even to the point, slightly less, even to the point that I find this heel, my left heel, under me in such a way that I'm now stable over my left foot. My left heel is now supporting me, and he can put a little pressure into me, and I'm stable enough that I can stand on one foot. To be ready to go to the next, and to again find the same support from my heel to the fourth, and to be in this continuous movement. So I'm able to stabilize and reverse and move and reverse. Otherwise, I fell. And at that moment, did you watch his response? He fell too. The moment I fell, he fell too. Right? The interaction between us changed. Great, thank you. Okay? The hockey players did. Because they learn they're much more powerful if they come away from the ice than they are if they're pushing into the ice. Right? It's incredible. But great jumpers don't push into the floor to jump. Right? They explode. A cat, when it comes off the floor, your house cat can go 8.5 feet in the air. If you've ever seen the YouTube videos, it's incredible, right? All right. Can I have the other? Sorry, thank you. Kaboom, kaboom. Is all that clear as mud? I can tell you that it takes many, many times to hear it, to go through it, to think about it, to begin to realize it, put it into practice. And that's what we do. We take these ideas, we take these principles, and we see if we can apply them to ourselves. Because how did Feldenkrais get where he got? He had 2 completely destroyed knees. How did he get to the place where he was able to walk? Get up, get down without having the surgeries and we're fortunate because at the time there was no surgery like that available to him. They wanted to amputate his left leg when he dislocated his leg when he was 19. They wanted to amputate him. Yeah? All right, I'm going to turn this just slightly so I can change the angle a little bit. All right, may I have a person sit here for a moment, just for a moment. Some volunteers, don't run too fast. Okay, Kathy, okay, fine. Okay, so just for a moment, actually, can you roll your pants up, please? Woohoo! There you go. All right, so now let's just for a moment, we can watch Kathy stand. Yeah, and we can take a moment and watch. So put one foot forward a little bit and start to come onto it. So you come onto it and stand as if you're going to stand on it. And you watch as she makes the movement. Does she get taller or does she get shorter? Does the movement come from the ground up and through her? And you watch what happens with her ankle at the moment that her weight comes on. How does she receive the weight and what takes place? So we just look and come back again, change, put your other foot forward. Yeah, don't do it well. Yeah. So when she walks, she made these movements. What did you observe? You see how quickly her left foot comes off the ground. You see as she comes onto her right foot, her left foot's completely, it's not there as a stabilizer, is it? And you watch when she goes onto her left foot. Look, what's that? Look how active her right foot is in helping her. And look at how as she goes onto her left foot, go ahead. She has the sense that she's moving forward and up a little bit. And then she comes over here and she stands on her right foot, and there she goes. And she's sinking. And not only is she sinking, but she's wanting to fall a little bit off of her hip joint. Right? So she's now having to utilize the tendons as a stabilizing response. Right? So that she's clearly not standing up and over the joint. Right? So, yeah. This we know. Now, what do we do about it? Please lie on your back here for a moment. With your feet here. Your other feet. Rollers. actually, we should turn this, because if I do this with your left foot, he's not going to be able to see this. So let's take the table slightly this way. Is that good? Okay. Feet there. And slide a little bit more towards me. Yes. She's giving me information. Can I have the microphone?
I have on and off rather severe arthritis pain, particularly in my left hip joint, which is affects the way what I can and can't do.
Okay. Clear enough. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this in a way that... No. No, we're just going to take a few moments and we're just going to examine a few things. And that's mostly what we're going to do at this point in time. We're just going to learn to take the moment and examine. So we watch our partner, because you're going to have a partner in a few moments, and you're going to find on which foot is it that they bear weight, that they fall into. And you will see all kinds. You'll see people collapse their arches, roll their ankles in. You'll see people that take their legs and expand and roll their feet too far outward. They do all kinds of things. But we're going to just take a few moments and we're just going to explore. Now, Kathy's beautiful. If you take a person, and she has a beautiful high arch, I don't know if you can see, if you can't. I can't turn it around, but her left arch is exemplary also. Just pick this up. And you can see the degree to which her arch is here, and you can see the degree to which both of her feet are fluid, turning in and out. Yeah? And we're just going to take a few moments when we touch, and we'll just examine this. We'll just look at this fluidity. A person who really profoundly pronates, their foot will be turned in like this, and the ability to lift the inner toe will be limited. The ability to move in any direction without hesitation will be restricted. Kathy is able to move in any direction without hesitation. I can lift her big toe, I can lift her little toe, and I can have this flow. And I can begin to play with what it's like for her to actually really take the fourth metatarsal, and I can really take and spiral into the fourth metatarsal, into the cuboid. Now, as I'm doing that, as I make these spiraling movements, I can really begin to have a sense of the degree to which that spiral begins to create a movement here at the head of the fibula. Yeah? So I can find the head of the fibula, and it's there, and I can even pretend that I'm going to take that same thing that you did, which was gliding the fibula up and back, gliding the tibial plateau a little bit, as if to spiral into her leg. Yeah, I can create every spiral, the spiral of the foot, the spiral of the ankle, the spiral of the lower leg, the relationship of the lower leg to the femur. So the movement has the spiraling up and in sense. Look what her breath just did. What did her breath just do? Why did her breath just do that? Because she could. Because if I give her the way that her leg just hangs normally, even though this is the leg that doesn't hurt her, her breath will be limited. The moment I provide for her, I'm going to do this in such a way that I really provide turn the calcaneus up and in and really provide for her the sensation of what it's like to stand on the outer edge of her foot, immediately she has the experience that she's standing the way she'd like to stand in the rest of her life. So here's what we're going to practice, okay? We're going to study a little bit of the relationship. We're going to look at their person as they walk, and we're going to study, and we're going to use as a basis, is the person free to move in any direction without hesitation? And if they have the tendency to be such that they can't lift one side of their foot or the other side of their foot freely, you get to mess with the metatarsal heads a little bit. You get to roll them in the direction that's easy for them, and then you begin to invite them to roll the other direction. Yeah, we're just going to do 3 or 4 steps so that you can just have this as a basic kind of a practice. You're going to take a moment and you're going to find how to spiral the 4th metatarsal a little bit outward and connect into the cuboid. And the cuboid is, do you know where the cuboid is? There's a notch right here. Yeah? Where the 5th metatarsal is. So it's this notch right there that you can feel. And the cuboid is right behind that, isn't it? Right, actually, right to the side of it. So, cuboid is right behind this notch. So if I have this leg here, then I can find this notch, and then I can find the cuboid, and I can actually begin to turn the cuboid with my fingers up and under into the foot. I can do it from there. I can turn my hand over and put my thumb under to do it. And I'll show you what we're going to do. This is going to have a surprise ending. Yeah. So we're going to take these relationships, the spiral, the cuboid up and under. We're going to touch the fibula. We're going to glide slightly the tibial plateau, and then we're going to do something that you've seen before. You're going to connect the 4th metatarsal into their pelvis so that you can lift their leg. Right? Now you've seen this before, but you've never understood the reason for it. Right? You've never understood how this is organizing of the foot. How that you take the rail of the foot and you take and you stand the rest of the foot on this relationship between the 4th metatarsal and the heel, so that you can have this relationship into the leg and you can take it directly into the hip. Right? Now, if we could look at it, and we can't do it, but Kathy's foot is perfectly placed now for walking. Because if I went like this, now she'd be pronating, wouldn't she? Her rest of her foot would have fallen off the cuboid. I can turn the cuboid right up and into her foot, and right up into her leg. Okay? Can you do that with each other? Can you play with it? And see if you can take it to the point where you're actually bringing the foot to stand? Now, just for the fun of it, Kathy, come and stand up for a moment. This is a short demonstration. We don't have so much time. It's a short demonstration. But what she's smiling about. Watch. Look what she has under her. She can literally turn her foot up and into her. You can go ahead and take this step again, and you watch how she's now. Sorry. Damn it, sorry. Oops. Oh, I'm stripping. You don't want to see me naked either. So when she takes this step, bring your foot forward a little bit. Yeah, your right foot. And right there, she has the ability to turn her cuboid right up and into herself. So go back again slowly, a little bit, and start to come onto it. She can literally have the sense that she turns the cuboid up and into herself, which turns the cuboid up and under herself, which wants to put her on top of her hip. And by the way, Look at how this back leg is now engaged. Come back again so that you can sense. Go ahead and walk again. Watch. Watch how her back foot continually supported her in moving up.
Why does it do that? Why does it know to do that?
Because the moon's in Aries. She's a fast learner. She has seen demonstrations. She's hypnotized by what's going on in the room. I don't know. Why she does this so quickly?
The question is why does it take the standing solidly on the fourth rail for this to support in that way? That's my question.
If she does it, so the question is why is it so important for her to stand on the fourth rail? That's the question? For her to walk that way.
For her to get the support from the back.
Her whole system at this point in time, even though we've worked on one side, her whole system knows that support. When I walk well, both of my feet have this lift, and I'm continually lifting, and I'm continually coming away. So this that she learned is in that foot too. Yeah? All right. Okay. It's mysterious, but functionally dynamic and sound. Okay, good. So with a partner, there are some tables for those of you who are uncomfortable on the ground. With a partner, what you'll do, pay attention, wait, don't run, please. Please. What you'll do is, first of all, they'll stand, they'll take a step, and you watch whether they tend to sink. You start to watch their feet, whether there's a sinking or whether there's a lifting. And you're going to work on the side where they sink. Okay, just for the fun of it. But you're going to work within the degree to which they can accept. That's easy for them. So you work in the direction that's difficult until it becomes easy, and invite that ease to come. And so maybe you can help the person stand on one leg, and then move, stand, support, and come onto the other leg. All right? Go play. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Kathy.
New connections.
New connections.
No connection, but the nice thing is feeling it on this side.
Right. Yeah, please.
I thought we took this table.
Help yourself. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, those 9-volt batteries. Yes.
Question for you. I have major issues with feet and walking. Are you
Thank you so
doing
much.
any FIs while you're here?
No, you'd be so far down on the list of requests. I would love to.
And you're located where?
I live in Seattle.
Seattle, okay.
We're just outside of Seattle.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
So I feel like my standing leg, I lift, but it's not a good thing.
Yeah, because look where you are. You're not standing.
My hip. So I actually want for it to sink more.
No, you don't. You want to organize yourself. So you
the hip
look.
doesn't jut out.
You want to be able to lift yourself over the leg that you want to stand on. So it's no.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is rather useless anyway.
You ready? What do you think?
Hello. Hello. That's right. Good. Great. Thank you. I'm going to go out into the dark here. So let me just make sure. So you're still getting the signal, right? You're still getting the signal from the mic? Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Hi there, Cynthia.
Cynthia, nice to see you. Pleasure. Great. Great.
Brenda's got a question.
So wait. You get for the videotape. You get to, but it's just the speakers are off, so it's just private.
So Jeff, what we were asking was, when Cynthia got me down the floor, she felt like I really relaxed into the floor and didn't need the rollers underneath to be able to do this. Can you give us an idea of when you would put the rollers under, and if there's a particular reason?
Depends if I'm going to use a board, if I'm going to use some other implement. That's for demonstration, so that it would be more specific, right?
Do you want to speak into that?
I am. I'm speaking here.
Yeah.
But I tend.
On a board, that would be a good position.
If I was going to use a board on your foot, then I'd want to have access to underneath your heel, and so that your heel's slightly lifted. But if I was to do this much longer with you guys, I'd have you lie down for a moment, and I'll show you what I would do. So which foot are you going to work with?
Left.
Okay. So here I can't get to the condyles of her knee very easily. Right? If I lift this just a little bit, now I've got the condyles of her knee. So if I was going to go a little bit further with her, I'm actually holding the lower part of her femur right now, where my hands are.
Yes.
I have a direct contact through and into her hip joint. So at some point in time when I want to do these things, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Then I'm going to transfer this up into a movement up and through. I'm going to connect this, and then I'm going to connect this. So I'm going to want to have access to the condyles. I don't have access when her knee's straight. I don't have the same points of contact that I can use. I have to really work, but I don't have the. Right. I don't have the direct.
See the trajectory at the knee.
Yeah.
She's in a much more knee flexion, so the position of the head of the femur and the joint, the connecting there, it's going to be in a different place.
Right.
Yes. She's standing in a little hip flexion when.
But she's also not going to stand like this when she's standing up. She's not going to have her knees like that. Right now you have her knees, and her knees are back against the ground. She's almost hyperextended against the ground. She's going to actually have a little flex in her knees when she's standing. Except for someone, because she doesn't.
Most people I see lock their knees more.
She doesn't hyperextend. Someone who hyperextends would go all the way back, and they would be locked back. But you can see that she won't hyperextend. Right?
See, so when you look at that angle, that's what I was looking at. And when the roller's under there, it brings her forward.
Yeah, I understand that. It brings her forward. But the main thing that you're looking for is to be able to produce for her the trajectory, the clear pressure of force from their foot through herself. If you can do that without the roller, that's fine. But in some cases, you may want to actually lift the foot just a little bit so that you have a straight angle in, and then be able to take it here, take it there, take a little twist, just like.
It gives you a more comfortable handle.
Yeah, it gives you
on the femur and on the tibial plateau.
And you'll have better access. Yeah. You'll have better access to the cuboid.
Yeah, yeah. And
so
definitely if you're using. Gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. And so it's just for that kind of ease of access. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Enjoy. This is just an example. I mean, we're not going to. We can't go deep in this here in the workshop. We just get to have the example of it. Okay. Thank you.
This is interesting.
while you think you know someone, you realize what you don't know that
Yeah,
you
you have
don't
to hold
know.
that and talk into
Oh,
it.
Okay.
So for the videotape, we're actually recording.
Oh, dear. Okay. So, what I'm saying is while you think you know someone, you realize what you don't know that you don't know.
Hey, Zach. Zach. I don't know if you can you get, it's pretty close. Anyway, yeah, so what don't you know?
Okay. So, everywhere I touch her, there's a reaction. Close your eyes. Thank you. There's a reaction right here, a very strong reaction, except when I pull.
When you
But even in a slightest movement of a toe, any proprioception through the ankle, any movement through the leg, through any part of the foot, there is there. And I would be curious to see, is there any way that you can just do something with her foot and I can see what you would do that wouldn't initiate that such a strong response? Because it's a very strong response.
Well, let's see if I can get comfortable enough for a moment here to do something. Because my first movement here is going to be, I've already in traction a little bit, and I'm going to invite the movement to go into her. But I lifted her in this case with a little bit of traction. This is
And
coming
she
through.
likes that.
And she likes that.
Yeah.
Here's the spiral.
Yep.
Now the movement is actually going into her. Now the movement is actually, she's stabilizing herself right now over that. I'm already in.
Thank you.
Because we overdo going in.
I mean, it was an immediate every time.
Right, yeah. So if this is her femoral head, right?
Yeah.
How far do I have to move that for it to go in?
Not much.
That's in.
Barely.
That's
it.
in.
Yeah, that's it. So true.
Right.
Okay. So you created a traction and your spiral goes out.
The spiral's in the direction that creates that. Okay. Good. What?
Started at 22.
So we've been about a half hour?
No, I mean, how much time were you thinking about per person?
I forgot to think about it.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
They've had 15 minutes.
Okay, so let's give them another 10 minutes and then we'll switch over. You need to turn on you can make the announcement, but you need to have them turn the sound up. I've got the speakers off so that I can walk around and record.
Can you turn the speakers up
Yes.
for a minute? We're going to make an announcement. Okay, Jeff.
What a wonderful thing was to watch. I've been trying to figure this out for the last 20 years.
Good.
It was such a great lecture. Thank you.
Good. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
We're going to take another 10 minutes. We'll come back, we'll review, and then we'll go and we'll turn it around, okay? So we'll take a few moments to debrief, and then we'll come back. So another 10 minutes. Everybody good with that? Don't switch yet.
Without switching.
Don't
Same
switch
partner,
yet.
yeah.
Don't switch it.
Not yet.
We'll wait for questions, okay? So another 5 or 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, we'll switch. Don't hold your questions and don't switch. Okay, great.
Don't switch within the pair.
Yeah, don't switch within the pair.
I don't know which one.
What happened to my other microphone? Damn it. Okay, Chico, I'll give it to you.
She has a question. All right.
What we notice is that it's really hard for it to go past her knee, and she's experienced this for a very long time. So, and she feels that when she releases her chest, it's easier, and you can see it's easier. And so I'm not really sure if she feels she has a question in herself that I'm asking blindly.
Oh my God, this is such a okay. That
I'm sorry to be hopping over you.
It's okay. Interesting enough, I didn't think I had that much ease going that way with the foot, but I actually think that I do, and the fibula head actually turns. but there is this this tonus in the middle of the leg, and it gets to the pelvic floor, and you can't go past that. And I feel that when I walk, especially you're talking about the push off that it has to turn, and so it's despite the fact that my foot I had surgery on, and it's the response up that prevents a lot of the things that causes me to actually not be able to switch forward.
So we'll use you for an example.
Okay.
To explain, okay?
So my question is, what's my question?
Well, we'll just look. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Why not?
Jeff, were you going to show us that way of bringing the leg up?
You're gonna find it, but I'll show it. I'll show. I'm gonna have questions in the middle, and then we'll. Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious, and it doesn't have to be now, but since I have these like toes that
Lift up. Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're talking about should we be moving to the third metatarsal, or it's almost as if I don't have a fifth.
Well, because look where your weight is. Where would you say your weight is?
Toward the inside.
Toward the inside.
Right. But I mean, it's been this way, since birth. So.
Well, but if I do just this much, it's no longer toward the inside, is it?
Right.
It's gliding back and like this, yeah? So I'm not worried about your toes, I'm worried about this relationship, because when you stand like that, you're now tall. But when you stand like that, you just got short. And when you stand like that, and I lift your cuboid up and under into you like that, stay there, that's a different world for you to stand on.
Right, yeah.
Now what happens if I do that with both? That's nice. Now come back to being there. And you can almost watch the world come into you.
What, if I go in?
Yeah, of course. Uh-huh. I'll show you. Don't let me put any weight into that foot. Now collapse your foot in. Your right foot in. Now create, that's it. Don't let me put any weight into that. You just have you have a basis for stability. Collapse it again. You can lean hard, but you don't have that. There's a lot. It's the outer point of the fourth bone. That's the secret. If you look really carefully, you see that there's this real ridge right in front of the camera there. So if you look really carefully, you'll see that there's a really profound little ridge right there. So for you, even though this is up, that's the point that you're actually going to have the support on. And if you roll it in, then then your weight's on the inside here. You no longer have the advantage of that point. Yeah? And it's amazing how that little point right there has such a profound effect on how stable you are. But that's like manna from heaven, that point right there. Yeah? Okay.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have questions. I'm gonna have questions for everybody in a minute. Oh, we need to take a break, don't we?
And then come back and switch.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have a question. I'm gonna give people 5 more minutes. We'll take a break. I forgot about breaks. I always forget about breaks. Go ahead. Tell me your question.
I feel like an archer. Is that what you're talking about? Archery.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 This is. So.
And then when you have it right here, it's like that's where the arrow would go.
This is right here. From the heel to here. the fourth toe. Yeah.
And this is the bone that turns.
All these bones turn.
I know.
This is the cuboid.
Oh, this is the cuboid.
Look at this. Look at the way it turns. This whole bone turns up and under the cuneiform. It connects under the navicular. It connects under the talus, and it kicks under the calcaneus. It's the keystone to the whole foot.
Then it moves all those.
It supports all of them. That's the support. Everything rests on that. It can rest on that.
Yeah.
It can rest on that. Yeah.
And I'm curious, do our policies, have them tell us more about what we're doing?
Yeah, they tell us where we place a little bit more pressure than we need. But I have calluses all over my feet. I mean, yeah, good.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
this.
So the cuboid turns up and under. Most people walk and they're like this. So the weight of the middle part of the foot is falling off the cuboid. The cuboid will actually, it supports up and under all the other bones of the foot. So it's under this cuneiform, it's under the the navicular, it's under the talus, and it's under the calcaneus. That's the keystone to the whole foot. Yeah, exactly. So if I do that specifically right here, just watch. I put that underneath. Right? Now we have questions of how far to lift the arch, and we have all kinds of questions, but it just gives you the first impression of how to really look at fluids. Yes.
Oh, I just come to see a skeleton,
Well,
and I was going to work with the girl, and I just want to start here.
Well,
that
we're
would be all right.
well. You're welcome to take the skeleton. We're going to take a break in 1 minute, and then we're going to come back and review this again.
This one, thank you.
All right. All right. Let's have a sound, please. A little sound, please. Sound, please. Thank you. All right. Please bring this to a close. Someone reminded me that we have not had a break yet. I tend to forget these things. When I was in New York recently, and I gave the workshop, and I'd say, it's time for a break, and they'd say, no! So, that's true. Isn't that true, Rachel? It's true. So everybody worked through the break, but I would like to take 15 minutes. It's 5 after, so 4, I think, or 5. I don't know what time it is. What time is it? And we need a competency moment. Okay, 1 moment. Candy's ready for a competency moment.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Thank you. I'm glad I have reminders. Okay, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Candy's going to give us a moment of competency. We're going to take a break. I'm going to come back and answer questions. I'm going to give another demonstration so that you'll have another opportunity to go and change partners and play with a little bit more refinement. Okay? Candy, you're on. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just orienting myself here for 1 moment.
All right. Bring your attention, please.
Okay, so here are some things that we learned and that were demonstrated for us today that you could see on the board if you looked, or if you listened to me, you could hear them, or not. So Feldenkrais practitioners are able to utilize their own embodied understanding of awareness through movement lessons to inform their awareness through movement and functional integration teaching. I believe Jeff even said that. Feldenkrais practitioners use the skeleton as a primary reference and understand stability and mobility. By the way, as long as we're here, we might as well honor that Feldenkrais practitioners recognize the value of mistakes in the process of learning, just in case you weren't perfect this time around. Wait, I missed something. Feldenkrais practitioners are able to perceive the dynamic relationships between different parts of the body at any given moment. They're able to notice when a movement pattern becomes more or less differentiated, notice when a movement pattern becomes more or less integrated, distinguish between a more or less efficiently executed action, and perceive the relationship of orientation and intention to action, and perceive how the client supports his or her own movement. Then I had one more I wanted to, and that is that Feldenkrais practitioners are able to reference previous lessons to inform the current lesson, because we're getting toward the end of the day, and that's exactly what's been going on. Thank you.
All right. Please take a break, 15 minutes, come back. We'll have another little moment of dialogue and then more practice.